A little while ago, I acquired this AT computer case. It's really rusty and is in really bad condition, but I really like the aesthetics of it and have plans to do a future build with it featuring a Pentium. So today, we're going to repaint this case and remove all the rust, completely restoring it back to its original condition. As you can see on the side, there is tons of rust, and that's not all of it. If we take a look around the back, you can see there's even more. So today, we're going to restore this case back to its original condition. Let's get started. Well, the first order of business is to remove the rust and strip back the paint on the main case housing. So we tried a variety of methods to do this, starting with a regular sander. While it did smooth out the rust, it didn't really get rid of it, and it wasn't taking the paint off either. So we decided it was time to move to something a bit harsher, since we were basically wasting our time with this. So what we decided to use next was the sandblaster. This was working really well, as you can see here, taking off the paint as well as the bulk of the rust. Now, this was working great, until we ran out of sand. So yet again, it was time to move on to an easier method. I somehow lost the footage of this method being applied, but basically we applied paint stripper to the case. This will remove all of the paint, allowing us to then just sand away the rust underneath. It does take a while to work though, so in the meantime, while that was working, we decided to turn our attention to the main chassis of the case. While the sander may not work well for removing paint, it does work very well for removing rust, as you can see here. This method was applied to basically all the rust spots on the case, and in the end, after all of this sanding, we were left with a case that was really clean and had no more rust. And whilst the sander did get most of the rubbish out of there, we still had to follow it up with just some regular old sandpaper, just to get into those tight areas. But at the end of all that sanding, as you can see, we're basically left with a rust-free case. There are little rust patches, but these won't matter after we paint the case. Speaking of paint, let's paint the chassis. I decided on this grey colour, since it was simply what we had on hand. The key with spray painting is to do multiple light, thin coats. This way, the paint won't run and you'll get a perfect result. As you can see here, the case turned out really nice after a couple of coats of paint. And as you can see here, after a couple more, it was looking almost brand new. We followed it up by painting the rear slot covers as well as the motherboard holder. Gosh, I was amazed at how clean it is. Serious, it feels brand new. And it also feels like it's powder coated too, believe it or not. And as you can see, that big rust spot is now gone. By the time all of this was done, the paint was ready to be taken off. As you can see here, the paint stripper has done its job. It basically bubbles the paint so you can come along and scrape it off really easy. And look at this, all the paint is coming off. And while the paint stripper did work quite well, we finished it off with the sander, just to get all those little spots of paint off. We were left with this metallic case, which was now ready to be primed. As you can see here, the primer is basically like an undercoat of paint, so then you can apply the main coat on top. In this case, we're going to be painting it the original beige colour, but just priming it is really important, since that way the paint will stick properly and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, basically you need to prime it before you can apply the final coat of paint. It did take a while to prime it though, so I've gone ahead and sped it up so you can see the whole process. Alright, now it's time to actually paint the case. So the primer has dried and now we're going to spray it with the final colour. you gotta shake the paint very well before you spray, so that way it all mixes together. And of course, we went ahead and painted the rest of the case too. Again, using the same technique, thin layers and then slowly building them up. Now that the whole case was basically resprayed, I turned my attention to the front panel, which I basically just gave a little clean. It honestly is a bit yellowed and I could retro bright it, but I can't be bothered. It's too much work. And I also can't figure out how to get the electronics out of the front, so it's gonna be a pain. But anyway, I just used my magic eraser as well as some isopropyl alcohol and some Windex to give the front of the case a bit of a clean just to make it look presentable. Then I reassembled the case. As you can see here, it looks really good and it looks brand new, apart from the front cover. But I'm really happy with this. Oh yeah, and I also added some little velvet feet so that the computer can freely slide around. Nice. Now it's time for the big reveal, putting the lid on, once and for all. I've been really excited for this day to come, and hopefully it all fits back together. Here we go. Let's grab the lid and put it on. And would you look at that? Doesn't that look amazing? Here's how it looked before, for comparison. Now back to the after. Gosh, I think it's time for some cinematics. Cue the music. Well, that's about it for this video. We've resurrected this computer case. You'll definitely be seeing this computer in a future build, so stick around for that. Anyway, that's it from me, and I'll see you next time.